Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome along to this week's webinar. We're looking at tips and tricks in CH50 Cloud Accounts today. So something a little bit different for you, jam-packed with tips and tricks to help you get more from your software. So I'm Michael, I'm going to be presenting. I'm joined by Jackie today as well, and also Claire, who will be on hand to answer any questions that you might have. A little bit of housekeeping just before we get started though. So because of the platform we use, you don't need a microphone. As long as you can hear us and you can see what's happening, that's going to be fine. If you have got a microphone, if you've enabled it, you're going to be muted automatically and you can't unmute yourself during the session. Now, that means you can't verbally ask any questions, but you will be able to pop them into the questions panel. You should see that in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So as I say, if you've got any questions, pop them in there. Jackie and Claire are on hand to try and answer any questions that you might have. And I think because of the numbers that we've got attending today, I'll be helping out with some of those along the way as well. If you can't see that questions panel in the bottom right-hand corner, just click your little icon on your toolbar. It's the one that looks like the speech bubble containing the question mark, and then you'll see that. And you can show or hide that throughout. You also have an option to download a handout. Now, the handout is very basic for today's session. It is really just a copy of the slides. There is a fantastic article available in our Help Center, though, which has got all the detailed information about what we're covering today. So I'll tell you more about that a little bit later on. There is an option to switch to full screen mode as well. So I've got my resolution set really low today to make things a little bit bigger, but you may find switching to full screen mode using the little option on your toolbar that may help when I start sharing my screen. Okay, so let's have a look at what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to run a little question for you in a moment as well, and I've got a little poll to run as well. So on what's your tip? So start having a think about what your favorite tip is. So if you were showing someone CH50, what would be your tip to maybe save time, or that little feature that you love? It may be a hidden feature or that you like the best. Maybe it saves you a bit of time here and there. We're then going to run through a series of demonstrations. These are the areas that we're going to be looking at. If we've got time, I've got a few held back up my sleeve that we can maybe look at as well, but that will be time dependent. So this is what we're going to run through. Additional support wise, I'll just mention a little bit about that at the end of the session. If you have downloaded a copy of the handout, the top tips and tricks link that you can see on the slide at the moment, that one will work. So if you click that, it will take you across to the Help Center article, but it is easy enough to find anyway. If you get into the Help Center, just search for top tips and it'll find the article in question. Now, quick question just before I ask about your top tip. I've got a poll that I'll quickly run. Just doing a little bit of research. So I'll just quickly launch that poll. So a quick question. How many webinars have you attended? Is it your first one today? Is it 1 to 5 or 6 or more? So just give me a little bit of an idea, so we can gauge that little bit of background. So I'll just wait till I get a decent percentage of you having voted for that one, and then we close that down. I'll share the results with you as well. Excellent. Okay, so we've got just over 80% of you voted there. So I'll just close that and I'll share the results with you as well, just so you can see that. So you can see 39% of you attending for the very first time today. Hopefully you'll come back for some more to join the other, however many percent that is. What's that, 61%? So 42% 1 to 5, and obviously 19% of you 6 or more. So they are all free to attend. If you can't attend the live sessions, there are recordings available as well. We always make those available afterwards. Links will be provided on your the follow-up email, which you normally get around about an hour after we finish. Right, okay. Let me just hide those results. Go back to the slides. And quick question for you now. I'll get you involved, so if you don't mind, what's your tip? So if you were presenting today, what would be the tip that you would maybe sort of advise other people to use? So what's your tip? If you got anything, just pop it into the questions panel. So again, your questions panel is in the bottom right-hand corner, and I'm sure we're going to be covering some of these options today. So Margaret, you're straight in. You love the F6 key. see what else we get. But again, keep them coming. I'll maybe read some of them out at the end as well. Right, for now though, what we're going to do, I'm going to start running through some demonstrations, and hopefully you'll pick up some good tips along the way. Now remember, some people like to make notes, but all of the information I am covering is in the, it is available in the Help Centre. So if you do have access to that article, it covers everything in detail that we're going to be covering today. Right, okay. Let me share my screen. Lots of great tips coming through there, lots of function keys. We'll pick up on the function keys in today's session. Some of those that you might not be aware of, and some that you can configure as well. Right, okay. Sharing my screen, so you should see my desktop at this point. And the first one I'm going to quickly pick up on today is a little bit different from the order of the agenda, is the practice data and the demo data. Now, if you aren't familiar with these are great options. So you can have a go of these options. I know Jackie mentioned it quite a bit on her webinars, that if you've seen something and maybe come along to the projects webinar, for instance, you're not sure if you want to use that in the software, you want to learn more about these options before you try it in your software live, then you can access the practice data and the demo data and have a go of these options. Now, to access these, really simple. You just go to File, Open, and you've got the two of them listed. So if I just use demo data as an example, just click yes to close the other windows there, and that's me in now. It may prompt you to log into that. If it does prompt you to log in, the default logon is Manager. Now, you may actually recognize some of the data in the demonstration company, as it's what I use on the webinars themselves. So you'll see in the demo company, it's called Stationery and Computer Mart UK, there's loads of customers set up, there's loads of transactions entered, bank accounts with balances against them. So it means that you can have a go and you can learn and have a practice in the software. Maybe there's an area that you're not familiar with, or maybe you've got a colleague that you're trying to train up on Sage a little bit. Do use those options. The practice company, if we just pop into that one, so open the practice data. Now this one's a little bit different in that when you access the practice mode, you get this option. Click Start Practicing. And basically this one, there's nothing entered in it at all. So if you go into customers, there's nothing. Transactions, nothing. And this one approaches it from a slightly different angle. If you want to enter maybe a transaction and follow that through and see what impact it has on different areas of the software. So if you're entering an invoice, for instance, when does it impact on the customer's account? That type of thing. So you can have a go of that. So that's the difference between the two. Demo data has loads of information already there. Practice company, essentially starting from a blank company each time. Now to switch back to my live company, it's just File, Open Company Data. And that's me back in, or will be once I choose my company and log in. And that's me back into my live company at that point. So I've got my customers, obviously my transactions, etc. So that's me back in my live data. So do remember those ones, great resource to have. Next, we're going to look at configuring your toolbars and your columns. And again, nice, easy feature. Quite a few people aren't aware of these, but right click is your best friend for this one. So you can configure your navigation bar down the left. So if there's any options that you don't use, as an example, be honest, very few people have ever used the diary option, I don't think. It's probably someone going to argue with me now and say I use that all the time. But if you right click anywhere on your navigation bar down the right, it will give you a list of the options that you have access to. So diary being one of them. If you don't use it and you just think, well, I want to declutter that list a bit, I can switch it off. I can hide it. If I don't use the fixed assets option, again, right click, switch it off. Some of you will have different levels of the software as well, so you might not necessarily have all of the options that I've got access to. You can always switch them back on at any point as well. You can either right click, choose the option that you want to switch on, or revert back to using the defaults. Now that not only goes for the navigation bar, you can also do it within a certain ledger as well. So customers, for instance, you've got a few options here, which are for if you integrate with Go Cardless. If you don't integrate with Go Cardless, you could right-click anywhere on your toolbar, find the options. So request direct debit mandate. I could switch that off. So maybe there's a few other options I want to switch off as well. So I can switch those options off. And again, decluttering your toolbar at the top. Again, if you want to switch them on, just right-click, and just in case of switching them on or coming right down to the bottom, there is the option to use defaults again. Also goes for your column headings. So right-click, and it'll give you a list of the columns that you can show or hide. And that also goes across to your entry screens as well. So if you right-click, it will give you a list of the columns that you can show or hide for that specific entry screen. So again, quite a good resource, that one, just to almost like customize it to suit your needs. Right, next we're going to go on something a little bit more unusual, and it's using the colors and the themes options within your software. Now, there's a lot of options that you may or may not be familiar with. You'll find them within tools and then options. It's quite a good option to explore in here as to what's available. The one I want to pick up on though is the colors tab, first of all. Now, the first thing I want to quickly cover is the color theme itself. Now, in the background, where I've got this sort of gray, sort of light gray sort of background on the navigation bar down the side, and my highlights will be in green at the moment. If I switch to something like, say, the dark theme, I'll just OK that. It does tell me it'll only be applied once the application is restarted. So let's just quickly close out. And we'll come back into the software again. And it should apply that dark theme. Quick question from Gillian there. If you configure for one company, do you need to repeat for the other companies too? Certainly not for the color theme. You shouldn't need to. I think that will probably, I think it's exactly the same for the ledger columns as well. I think that will also be applied. It's more of a program specific setting rather than a company specific setting. Anyway, just let me quickly log back in. So again, you might just want to change it. Just feels like a little different here and there. So you've got them available, the dark theme. So again, just to confirm, it was in tools, options, and then on that colors tab at the top, I switched to dark. But there's obviously light and white are very, very similar. So choose your theme, just click OK, OK that one. And then again, if I close out and restart Sage 50, that theme should come into effect. So back to where I was at the beginning there. So again, Rahel, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, about the color theme there. Where did I do that? I'm going to go back into that screen anyway, so we'll show you now. So we went into tools at the top, into options, and then it's the colors tab. Next, though, I want to pick up on the alternate row colors. Now, if we just cancel out of this for a moment and go into customers as an example, I'm not sure if it'll pick it up on the shades when I'm sharing my screen there, but you can just almost see you've got this sort of alternative, very, very faint gray color. So it alternates between the gray and the white. Now you can change that if you want to. And to do that, we're just going to go back into tools, options, and then back into colors. So for each of your ledgers that you've got available, you can set that alternative color. So you can even define your own custom colors as well if you want. One tip I would give is that paler colors do work best. I see some people using the really dark colors, and because you've got that black font within the software, a black font on a dark color background is not going to look that great, to be quite honest. So choose the lighter colors I just use that sort of aqua colour, okay that one for customers. And you can, your different ledgers, you can set that different color if you wanted to. Just to show you what that looks like, if I just okay that and go into customers, sometimes it makes it a little bit easier to read. So I can have a little play around with that one as well. Now that one is a computer specific setting, that one. So if you do change your colors, it's not going to impact on anyone else. So I'll just show you that one again. Tools, options, back into colors. And again, just click your little color picker icon, and then you can choose the color you want to use. One little tip here is you'll notice that on the colors, when I first go into it, it does default to black. Hopefully you can make that out. Now, if I just go in and rather than cancel, if I click OK, you'll see this effect. And what that would mean is when I go into customers, I'm just going to see every other one. They're still there, but it's because it's black text on that black background, you can't really see it unless I sort of highlight a line. So watch out for that one. It might catch you out here and there. Obviously, you can always go in, change colors, or you can just ignore the colors as well if you wanted to. So you can just switch them off. Go back to customers, and I'm back to where I was. Right, now when I did select some records there, it takes me on to my next little tip within the software. And it's selecting multiple records. Now there's two selection styles within Sage. By default, it's the other one that I'll demonstrate in a minute that will be set for you. Now, what do I mean by selection style? So in customers, as an example, if I click onto a record and then click onto another record, you get this sort of effect where it's an on-off type highlight. So I click on a record and click on it again, it switches the highlight off. So I can just randomly click through the list, switching highlights on. Let me just clear those highlights. So it's this on-off selection style that you've got when you're selecting records. There is, however, what we term the Windows selection style, and you can choose whichever one you prefer. You can have a go over them as well. So into Tools, back into Options, and on the Environment tab this time, we've got the two selection styles here. So this time we'll choose the Windows selection style. Okay, that one. If I go back to Customers, this time if I highlight a record and then go to highlight a different record, you'll see as I click through the records, the highlight follows me round. So you no longer got this on-off type highlight selection option. If I want to select multiple records, two useful keys to be aware of. One is your Shift key. So if I highlight this account here and think, right, I want to select everything between that account that I've got selected and this Mike's Insurance Services, if I hold down the Shift key, it'll select them all within that range. However, if I release the Shift key and then go and click on a different record, I'm back to where I was. Now, the other option, if you want to select random records, is just hold down the Control key. So I can then just, as I'm holding down the Control key, I can select on or click on random accounts there at that point. So have a go of that. Again, that option is within Tools, Options, and then on the Environment tab, you've got your selection styles. Not sure, it's probably just a personal preference. Obviously, I've worked at Sage for a few years now, so I do prefer when I'm working the Sage selection style, so you get that on-off type effect. Probably a little bit easier, I think, that when you're working within the bank reconciliation to have that one selected as well. Right, okay, keep your questions coming. Jackie's and Claire's frantically typing answers there for you. So we will try and pick up as many as we can, but we've got about 250 logged on the session today. So apologies if we don't get a chance to answer all the questions. We'll maybe try and pick some up after the session as well, but keep them coming. Right, quick question on the selection style though from Anna. Why doesn't this option work within the transactions screen? So if I pop into transactions, it doesn't work in that way, because generally when you highlight a transaction, if you're going to highlight an individual transaction, you'll either want to read that one or you'll want to use one of the corrections options. So it will only let you select one transaction at a time within the transactions list, and that's going to be the reason why, because of your error correction options at the top. If you needed to select certain transactions and obviously only include them on a report, then you're either going to have to filter, or when you go into run a report itself, you'll be able to then specify your transaction range. Hope that makes sense, Anna. Right, okay, moving on. Next, we're going to go look at hiding deleted transactions. Now, this is an option if you've just started using Sage in recent years. It is an option that will be switched on by default. Now, if you're prone to the odd error here and there, so if we just take a look at this one as an example, this is on that ZMC 007 account. It's a live transaction, but if I delete this one, so that's now shown as deleted. It appears in red on the list. But if I go into that supplier account, there it is there, have a look at the activity. Actually, I've obviously got the deleted option switched on. So we go into settings and then company preferences. Just enter my password again. And then on the parameters tab, it's this option here, exclude deleted transactions. So by default, depending how far back you go, it wouldn't have been switched on. In recent versions, it would be. Now, if it's not switched on, what it means is the transaction's still listed in transactions. But if I go and have a look at the activity of that supplier, I will now see the deleted transaction. It doesn't impact on the balance on my account because it is a deleted transaction, but it is listed. Now, it might be easy to, you can see transactions in red, etc., and you might ignore those. But if I was to send that to Excel as an example, it just appears in black. So it doesn't transfer. If you've got some transactions in black indicating it's a live transaction, some in red indicating it's a deleted, and it doesn't impact, it doesn't transfer that color across when you're transferring to Excel or even when you're printing out. So be aware of that one. So again, just that setting. It was settings, company preferences. So just enter my password again, and it's on the parameters tab. Exclude deleted transactions, switch it on. Okay, that. The transactions will all still be listed within the transactions list itself. They're always going to be there, even though they've been deleted. You've got them there for audit purposes. But when we now have a look at the supplier, any transactions that are deleted are no longer going to appear. So you can look great, don't make any mistakes, just filters them out. So again, nice, simple one, that one. Right, let's move on again. So a bit of a whirlwind tour this webinar today, I think. We're going to move on to batch changes next. Now, the batch changes option that I'm about to show you, it's not available in the essentials level of the software. So please be aware of that one. It will be on standard and it is in professional, but not in essentials. Now, the batch changes option, you'll find it within most ledgers. So we take customers as an example, and I'll just highlight some, I'll just highlight 3 or 4 accounts. So with those selected, if I want to make changes, so things like maybe I want to set credit limits on these ones, maybe I'll review them all at the same time, or maybe I want to specify something in one of the analysis fields against these selected records, then we can do that simultaneously. So we highlight the records. From this sort of grouped icon, I have a batch changes option. Depending on your resolution, the size of your monitor, you may actually just find that batch changes option is just listed as an option along the top. But on mine, because of the resolution, I just click on the grouped icon and then go into batch changes. Now that's going to present me with essentially a skeleton record. So what are the changes I want to make at this stage? So for instance, in credit control, I might think, well, those accounts that I've selected, rather than go into them individually, I want to increase the credit limit to £2,000 on those 4 accounts. So pop in there, whatever changes you want to make, click save. As usual, your prompt, it says you've chosen to make changes to multiple records. Do you want to save changes? I'll click yes. And we'll now see on the ones I've got highlighted, you can see their credit limits have all changed. Now that potentially that can be a big time saver, that one, when you're updating records. But have a good look through that batch changes option. The fields that are active, they're the ones that you're going to be able to change. Not sure why you would want to change the company name for all of them, but potentially you could do that. Right, okay. I'll pick up on batch changes in a second as well. Next, I want to pick up on inactive records. Now, historically, if you had a record that you wanted to get rid of, so you wanted to delete it, you would have, as a customer, as an example, you would have had to have cleared your audit trail. So the account must have no activity. But maybe you didn't want to clear the audit trail to get rid of transactions because it does it across the board. It's not just one account that it would delete transactions from. So beyond that, what you would have then done is, and some of you, if you've used Sage accounts for a long time, you might have like void account or do not use as the name, and then you've applied a filter to hide it. But these days you've got the inactive records feature. Now, the inactive records just means that when an account meets certain criteria, and the criteria that it would need to meet is all outlined in the help center. But for a customer, for me to flag it as being inactive, as an example, so let's say they've bought something from me, they've paid for that, so we know it's a one-off transaction. Maybe they've gone bust and we've written off the balance now, so we just don't want to see them cluttering up my customers list. You've probably got loads of these as well. So when they're in a certain position, so for instance, for customers, they've got a 0 balance. They can't have any unallocated transactions as well. So if you've got an invoice and a credit note, they must be matched together, for instance, and a few other parts to the criteria as well. But let's say it meets all the criteria and we want to just hide it. What we can do is go into the record, and at the top there in the account details, you've got this inactive checkbox. If I tick that and I save the record, as long as it meets the criteria, I'm going to be presented with a blank record. And you can see, if I just display them, you can what it will do, it will flag the record as being inactive. So this one here, it's got a Y in the inactive column. Now, if you're on Essentials, you're going to have this option available, but what you don't have is you don't have the batch changes option. Now, batch changes is a great option for this one. If you've got loads of records that you just think, right, well, I want to hide them, then what you can do is highlight those accounts. Again, go into the grouped icon, batch changes, and say, right, I want to flag these as being inactive. Click save, click yes, and assuming they meet the criteria, they will be flagged as being inactive at that point. So all these ones with a Y in this inactive column, it means they're flagged. Now, what it means with that one, if I want to hide those, I just take the little tick out of this box in the top right-hand corner, and I no longer see them. And I can sure hide those at any time. So I think, right, this is a one-off customer. They're not going to come back to me. I can flag them as being inactive, hide them from the list, but maybe in the future they do come back to you. I think, right, this one here, they were inactive. They want to place another order. I've got them set up. I could just go into the record, take the tick out, save it, and that's now flagged as an active record again. Just a great way and simple way as well of filtering your list. Now, the inactive records option, it's available in customers, suppliers. You've got it available in your nominal codes option as well. And remember, inactive, potentially it's a column that you can show or hide. So just right click, it's there. I might not want to see that in the nominal code, so right click, back to my standard sort of list. So customers, suppliers, nominal, bank accounts you can flag as being inactive, and also your product records as well, so products and services. Right, okay, so nice simple one, that one. If you need an outline of the criteria, that it's all outlined within the help center as well. If you just get into the help center, nice and easy, help center at the top here on the navigation bar, search for inactive records or inactive accounts, and it should bring up an article which outlines the criteria for customers, suppliers, nominal bank, and also the products and services ledger as well. Another great tip, and sometimes you may or may not be aware of this, is the ability to set or flag reports as being favorites. I think a good example of this one, I always think, is when you go into customers and then reports. When you first go in, it'll say no favorites have been added if you've not used it. And that's because it's highlighting this favorites folder. But there'll be certain reports that you look at and think, oh, right, it's an age debtors report. Which is the one I run again? I can't remember. So rather than being in that position, what you can do, so let's say it was, we'll just say it was this one, I can tick the star, I'll just click on it, it'll turn it gold. What that does, it flags it as a favorite. So you can add as many to your favorites as you want. All that means is, when you've got the favorites folder selected, it will list them by default. If you no longer want them to flag a certain one as your favorite, click on it, it'll remove it from the list. Doesn't delete it, just doesn't include it in the favorites list. Just means when you come into these areas, so when we're coming into customers and then reports, because it defaults to favorites, it selects that one by default. This also works for your layouts as well. So if we go to invoices and credits, and we go to print as an example, again, I've got nothing in favorites, but I'll go into layouts, and let's say it was this one. This is the one I use, so I'll flag it as a favorite. And then I'm not hunting around looking for it on the list. So just again, when I first go into print, it will list my default. So again, rather than going into layouts and you're up and down the list trying to find the one that you last ran, good for your colleagues as well. Saves them hunting around if they're not that familiar with it. It'll just select it by default for you. And that goes for all other areas, reporting and layout areas. So like your customer statements, for instance, exactly the same. Any questions on that? I can see again, I can see all the questions coming through. But keep Jackie and Claire busy. They're typing away as frantically as quickly as they can. Obviously a little bit behind, but I'll try and pick some of them up myself in a moment as well. Right, final area that we'd planned to cover with you, and this is one of my personal favorites, this one. It goes back to function keys. So quite a few of you at the very beginning when I was saying, what's your favorite tip? What's the tip that you would advise other users to be aware of? And you mentioned F6, F7, F8. They're all common ones. If you need more information about the function keys, just get yourself into help and then shortcut keys. It should bring up the help article relating to that. So if I just scroll down, it'll list them all. So function keys F1 to F12. All of your function keys have a use within the software, but some of them, F11 and F12, you can configure. So this article will outline what your function keys are used for. And you'll see them as well when you're working in the software these days as well. So if we go to customers and batch invoice, you'll see the options along the top. It mentions those function keys just to raise that awareness. So if you needed to insert a row or delete a row, F7 or F8. But two of them you can configure, and that's F11 and F12. And to do that, we go all the way back to almost where we started, into Tools, Options, and then we're going back into the Environment tab. I couldn't think there for a second. So environment tab, this is where you've got F11 and F12. Now by default, if you're working in Sage and you press F11, just let me quickly show you. So if I press F11 at the stage, it brings up the control panel. If you press F12, it's going to take you into the report designer. Now, not many people, I don't think, will launch the report designer that way. You're much more likely to go into customers, then reports, and launch the report designer than using your F12 key. So you can use them for something else if you want. Now, a great use for this one, so I love this little tip, is to pop something else in. So what else is it you use? Now, one of our most common support articles within our help center is the tax code finder. So when you're working away and you think, oh, how do I enter this type of transaction, or what tax code would I use for this type of situation? Very common in our help center. Get into the tax code finder article and answer a few questions, and it will outline what you need to do. So to make it easy to access things like that, what you can do is essentially pop a path in F12. Now you probably find you won't be able to use that for F11 unless you're on version 28.1. 28.1, the number of characters was increased to be in line with F12. Prior to that, you were restricted to 50, and you generally find that 50 characters isn't enough. But 28.1, if you're on that one, you should be okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what you would need to do. So I've got the path in. So this is the path to the article itself. But to get it to work via F12, you need to add this little bit of text in at the start. So CMD space /C space start, then another space followed by your path. Now, if I copy all of that and I go back to Sage, and rather than leave the path to the report designer in there, I'm going to paste that in, and I'm just going to OK that. And what it now means is if I press F12, it should load that help center article. So it's a great little technique, that one. You're not having to go into the help center and search for it. You could pop any other web address in there for that matter as well. So that's just a simple web address to that help center article, which is a good little tip in itself, this article. So you just access the article and start answering a few questions, and it will prompt you how to enter that type of transaction into your software. Excuse me. So just to confirm where we did that one, get my mouse working, it was tools, options, environment, and then we pasted that command, that path, into the F12 box. So just to confirm the beginning of that path as well. Actually, someone's just asked for that. So what I'll do is I'll copy the whole thing and I'll pop it into the questions panel. I'll paste it in so you can have that if you need it. So that's the path in there that you'd need to copy. Should find the information about that one in our help center as well, should you need it. Right, just about brought us to the end of the session for what we planned to cover. I'm going to try and quickly point in the direction of 3 other things as well. One is the default view. So these are your bonus tips very quickly. So into tools, options, and on the view tab, you can set your initial view. So if you like to come into the software and maybe you like to use the dashboard, business dashboard, for instance, if you're on version 28, or maybe you like to work within customers, for instance, or maybe your primary role is within invoices and credits, you can set that. It just means when you log in, it takes you straight into that ledger. Again, just saving your click, put you straight in the main area where you work. If you're on 28.1, great little tip. When you're logging in as well, so when you enter your logon name, and your password. Little checkbox now in version 28.1. Remember my logon details. I'd hate to think over the years how many times I've typed in manager as my logon name, followed by my password. So all I need to do, just tick the checkbox. Remember my logon details. It's not a recommended option if you run a shared device or a public device. So if it's just yourself that running or using your PC that you're running Sage from, great. Tick the little box, click log on. All it means is that when I come into that company next time, it will automatically log me in as manager and into my password for us. Again, I'm straight in. Great option as well if you've got multiple companies and you're constantly switching between them. You're not having to log in each and every time. You can switch that off as well if you no longer want to use that. So settings, user management, delete stored logon details. So I'm back to where I was at that point. The other one as well, final one I want to quickly mention is schedule backup. Been around for quite some time now. On the file menu, it's only the manager logon that will see this. But schedule backup can be a big time saver. You'll be aware that we always recommend at the end of every day, check your data, take a backup. This will do it, essentially do that for you in the background. If you've got multiple companies as well, even better, because it's going to do them one after the other. But you need to be logged in as manager to see this option. Let's pop into settings in a moment. If you haven't seen this option before, get into the Help Center and find the information relating to it. Mine's gonna go slow now. Let's see if I can refresh that. Got that many companies, and obviously I'm broadcasting via the internet as well today, so that's probably going to slow it down a little bit as well. Right, I'll put some more coal in the steam-powered PC that I'm on at the minute, I think. Right, okay, come back to that one. But again, if you haven't seen that, it can be a great time saver, that one, so do check that out. That's schedule backup. Right, now that brings us to the end of the demos. Keep your questions coming. I'll try and pick a few of those up in just a moment as well. Just want to quickly mention the Help Center. Obviously, if you have downloaded the handout, the link to the Help Center article, that will work for you. The link on this slide will work as well. Nice and easy to access, loads of information in there. So do use that, whether you want support guides, access to webinars, videos, or you want to get in touch with our support team. All the information you need is available. Upcoming webinars, quite a mix of topics coming throughout October that we've got planned in. Clear Audit Trail, we've got that one on Tuesday next week. They're all free to attend. So if you want to get yourself signed up for them, lots of you did indicate at the beginning it's your first webinar with us. We do run them live and we do make the recordings of the sessions available afterwards as well. So both links that you need will be included on your follow-up email. So Rahel, your question there, do you get a recording for today? Yes, you will. So you'll get that on the automated email, which you get in roundabout, I think we got that flagged around about 2 hours time. So by the time you get that, the recording of today's session should be available to you. But if you do want to sign up for any of the sessions that we do have planned in, please do so. If you can't attend, you will just get an additional email afterwards, just saying that the recording's available, just as a reminder. If you've got any requests as well, maybe topics that you'd like to see covered, do check out the recordings because there's loads on there. We tend to run a new topic each week. But if you've got any requests for maybe topics that we haven't seen covered or certain aspects that you'd like to see covered going forward, there will be a little survey pop up as you leave the session today. So if you get a chance, pop some comments on there, along with any other feedback you might have. If you want to share any thoughts, ideas about the webinars, etc., you can take a minute to provide that, would be greatly appreciated. So it brings us to the end of the session. I'm going to try and pick up some questions myself in a moment as well. Keep them coming. We'll hang on for about another 5 minutes or so. We've got loads outstanding. If we don't get a chance to answer yours, then we'll maybe try and pick them up a little bit later on. Quick question from Siobhan there. The code article that I mentioned earlier, is it suitable for Irish companies? Not that specific one. I will try and find the link that you need, Siobhan, and I'll see if I can email it out to you. So it's slightly different, obviously approach it from an Irish perspective. Right, now if you're about to leave, thanks for coming along. Hope you've enjoyed it. Something a little bit different where we're not just looking at maybe a big ledger or how to do VAT returns or complete a process. Lots to think about, hopefully giving you some food for thought, allowing you to maybe customize your software a little bit. Your follow-up email you'll receive in round about, I think it's 2 hours it's scheduled for, with there being a new topic today. And it will include the links that you need to register for future webinars and also watch recordings. But again, once again, if you can take the time to fill in the survey as you leave, greatly appreciated that one. So if you're about to leave, take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you again on some future sessions. If you want to hang on for questions, then I'll try and pick some of those up along with Claire and Jackie. So Heather, your question there, can you restore a deleted transaction if you delete one in error? The answer to that one is no, you can't. Once it's deleted, other than entering it again, of course. Nikki, you're asking there, do we have sessions on Report Designer? Funny you should mention that one. We've just, someone that with a lot of Report Design experience just joined the webinar team, so hopefully we'll be running those soon. The only one we run currently is the Introduction to the Report Designer. So that one, I think we'll next be running that one in November. So watch out for that one being available to book onto soon. Angela, you're asking, can you just quickly repeat how to save the logon details? So again, for the logon details to work, the remember my logon details, I'll just share my screen. You do need to be on version 28.1 for this option to be available. It's a brand new enhancement, that one. So all I did was when you go to the logon screen, you have this little checkbox, remember my logon details. So again, if you've got a really long name or your password's massive, just going to see if you type that in each and every time. Susan, you mentioned there, can you save the questions and answers? There's not an option within GoToWebinar that would enable you to do that one. However, everything we have covered today, all the hints, the tips, the related questions, you will find answers to that within the Help Center itself. Adrian, you mentioned there, can you attach an invoice when entering a supplier invoice? Let me have a quick look at that one for you. I've just closed out. Not clicking cancel, that's today's tip. So let me just log back in. So when we're going into suppliers and then batch invoice, so we have this little attach option. I can't remember what version that was introduced in. So that would allow me to basically browse my PC. Let's see, I've received the invoice, it's a PDF, and I want to attach that. So that will attach whatever I've just attached, and you can attach more than one document to your transaction if needed. Now just fill in the details and save it. And that document would then, you would have the ability to view the attached document in the future should you need it. Obviously great if you've been emailed things like a purchase invoice, gives you quick access to that. Richard, you're asking there, can you create a draft journal rather than having to post it when you close it? Yeah, yes and no for that one is the answer. And there's probably a few options when it comes to journals, actually. If you're on the professional level, when you go to enter a journal, you do have the memorize option. And what it means is you could fill in your journal and then memorize it. So again, it's essentially saving what you've got on your screen, saving it as a file. So if I just try and show you a quick example. So again, you would need to be on the professional level for this. So let's say that was my journal. I appreciate journals can be, it can be hundreds of lines sometimes. But let's say that was my journal. I'm going to build it up. So what I can do is I can memorize that one, give it a file name, just use my initials, save it. And then I don't need to save what I've got on the screen. So let's say when I'm ready, I come back to the journal entry. I could recall that, find my file, there it is, load it, and it'll pop that back in for me. And I can continue adding to it. And then when I'm ready, I can then save it. The other option that you could maybe consider as well is preparing your journal in Excel and then importing it as and when you're ready. So that's another, I'll probably think that's a better option than using the memorize and recall option. If you're not that familiar with importing transactions, do check out the webinar recordings on that one, Richard. It can be a big time saver. If you understand importing, then you'll probably start, as you work, you'll probably start to spot opportunities where you could maybe use that to save yourself a bit of time. Quick question from Angela there. Can you raise purchase orders on Sage? On the professional level of the software, you can. And Bobby, you were just asking similar one to whose question was Adrian's there. Can you attach a document to a bank payment? Have a quick look at that one. So we go into a bank to do a bank payment. The answer to this one is not within your software, no. However, there is an alternative. The alternative is if you integrate with auto entry, you may have seen that one referenced over the last 3 to 4 months. Auto entry enables you to, let's say you had the auto entry app on your phone. You would take essentially a photograph of, let's say, a receipt. It will, if it can read that, it will essentially post that into your accounts with the image attached. So it is an option. There is a webinar recording on that one as well, should you need it. John, you were mentioning there, can you memorize an existing posted journal? No, is the answer to that one. You can't recall it from your list of transactions, as it were. So no, you can't go down that route. Right, at that point, apologies if we haven't had a chance to answer your questions. They are starting to dry up a little bit. I'll have a good look through them, and if there's any that I think maybe we could offer you a little bit of advice on that here and there, what we'll do is we'll drop you an email. Otherwise, have a good look through the Help Centre. Do access the Hints and Tips article. It's got all of the content that we've covered today. It should all be on there. So do check that out and you'll get all the information that you need. So on that note, we're going to end the webinar. Once again, many thanks for coming along. Take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you again. Many thanks.